Good morning, everyone from beautiful British Columbia. Thank you for joining us for 3 questions every business should ask when choosing a location. This webinar is all about location, location, location. More specifically, how to get the information you need to be certain about your location decisions. I'm Kat Gracie from Safe Software, and we have with us Michael Simon, a location expert and CEO from Tetrad, as well as Aaron Learmont, the Client Services Manager over at Tetrad. Michael and Aaron are going to be showing us today about evaluating locations based on market data, avoiding cannibalizing current market share, and getting the information you need. Also joining us from Safe Software is Mark Stokes, who will be handling all of your questions.
Hello.
Feel free to chat us via the GoToWebinar panel, and he will try and answer your questions as we go, but we'll also have a question and answer period at the end. Finally, also, thank you to Robin and Steffi for joining us. They'll be keeping us in line, making sure we're on time and that all things run smoothly. Of course, most importantly, you guys. So thank you for joining us today. We'd really appreciate it if you let us know what industry you are in. And you'd have to do that if I had the poll. You should all see a poll on your screen. If you could quickly answer, we'll... Oh, wow. We definitely got some answers in. Government, utilities, winning. Oh, other is winning. So those of us who are in the other category, we'd really appreciate if you chat us your actual industry, seeing that it's so high. So, and how do you know it's so high? Because I'm going to actually
give them
actually
2 seconds.
2 seconds, and then I'm going to close it and show the results. Yep, 42% other winning. 3, 2, 1. There you go. So coming in at 39% other. So yeah, if you could use the chat panel and chat us your industry, we'd really love to hear more about where you're coming from. So who are we and what is FME? Safe Software is the maker of FME, a tool that helps organizations move and share their data, freeing them to focus on their objectives. We've been helping organizations transform their data for over 20 years and have been working with Tetrad for well over 10. Michael and Aaron will be demonstrating in the context of Tetrad's product Sitewise, which is powered by FME. But whether you use our products or not, our goal today is to show you the techniques you can use with market data to make better informed location decisions. And believe it or not, it is actually time for another poll. So if you have FME experience, we'd love to hear about it. If you've never heard of it, you don't know anything about it, like to know more, chat out your answer or answer the poll and get those answers out. Well, we've got a good selection of different answers coming out here. Let's give it a couple more seconds. And closing the poll now. I'm pretty happy with that 22% advanced users. You guys can come show me a thing or two. So with that, oops, I missed the poll question. With that, we're going to actually hand it over now to Tetrad, and they can show us all things that they know. So thank you. Over to you, Michael and Aaron.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for inviting us to participate. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Aaron and myself are going to share the presentation. Aaron's going to drive. I'm remotely working this today. So Safe Software's FME is an absolute fabulous tool that solves many different types of problems. Our type of challenges in our industry is solving real estate and retail site selection problems. We represent and work with large national retailers as well as regional retailers and restaurants that are looking to expand and plan their markets across North America. In addition to software plays a role in the analysis that we have a plethora of data from demographics to traffic counts and expenditures that help us analyze real estate site selections. But FME didn't contain some of the special transformers that we require to do our type of work, and so we've partnered with Safe Software to build into FME a number of custom transformers. Aaron, perhaps you can show a few of the Sitewise transformers which are integrated into FME, and we'll talk about what they are.
Sure. So we've got about a dozen custom transformers that we've created, and they do things like append demographics to records or create drive time polygons, calculate driving distances or drive time times between two locations. We do geocoding, global geocoding as well. We can grid markets and create fancy reports to summarize findings for site selection.
Thank you, Aaron. So essentially, behind all of our transformers, it's very data-driven. So whether it's geocoding or demographics or a number of other sources of data, we're able to access those in our workflows. I think the best way for us to show how we use these workflows in FME is to show a few examples. So we've prepared 4 or 3 small examples, and by working through those examples, we'll give you a sense of how this tool can be used to help retailers and restaurants, or anyone that's real estate related. And when I say real estate related, one example might be a user who's a wound care center or a freestanding emergency room. They're still pulling patients or customers from a trade area around the site. So the first thing we show you is how can we leverage customer data to understand the trade area profile of anyone who's real estate driven. When we take customer data in the form of an address and we geocode it, we're essentially appending a latitude, longitude to each customer, which gives us the ability to plot them on the map. The screen that you're looking at right now shows customer spottings around, I think this one was a fitness gym in New York. So you can see the plume of different colored customer spottings around every fitness club, and you're starting to get a sense of where my business is pulling its customers from. The goal of this is to understand, understand what drives my trade area, and based on what I learn about how my existing stores or restaurants are performing, we can then leverage that information to look at new prospective sites and make educated guesses about how they will perform and whether they will also be strong performers or not. So the FME workflow in this case will call the SiteWise geocoder to add the lat-long coordinates and then publish that data into SiteWise for visualization, which can also be filtered by the end users who will be able to say, show me only my customers for store 1 or store 2, or show me store 1 and store 2 to see if there's any overlap or cannibalization. If I put a third store in, how is that going to impact and steal sales from its sister stores? So while that first slide was where are my customers coming from, the second slide is showing how we've built an FME workflow that basically answers this question. It says, how far around my stores do I need to go to capture X% of business? In this example, we took that fitness club in New York, which has about 300 locations across North America, and we said, let's move around that store until we find 75% of my business. That's commonly referred to as your primary trade area, the area from which you're getting the majority of your sales. So you can see here that these isochrones, or drive time shapes, they represent 75% of business, but they're different in size. And it makes sense because an urban location is going to pull its customers from closer, and as you move into more suburban or rural locations, you're going to have to go further to come to this destination. The key to this is the SiteWise drive time transformer, and that leverages our drive time engine, which uses road speeds and can be adjusted to figure out how far you can drive through road networks to find that percentage of business. So continuing with the fitness club example and recapping that first we geocoded our customer data to leverage it spatially. Second, we found out how far around stores we needed to go to find the majority of our business. And the third thing here is we've used what's called a census block group. The smallest building block of the United States Census is called a block group, and in Canada it's called a dissemination area. And those are little areas or regions equivalent to neighborhoods for which we know specific demographics. What we did is we were able to aggregate the number of customer points from the geocoding inside of each block group. And so, for example, if I had a block group that had 10 customers or 10 members of that gym, we then took the ratio and divided it by the number of people living in that block group who were older than 18 years old enough to join a gym. So this is a very relatively simple metric, but it tells us a lot. we're now looking at a measure of our penetration into the marketplace. And this is answering that question, how are we doing relative to the available market potential? And the areas that are thematically colored red are showing very high customer penetration. We're having 17% of all people residing in that neighborhood that are over 18 are members of that gym. What we're not showing on this is when we start layering in competitors, you're able to see very clearly why your trade areas were shaped the way they are because of impacting or interceptory competitors, natural barriers, or man-made barriers such as highways and bridges. So before I talk about this final slide, and our goal again is to give you a flavor of how our site-wise transformers have been combined and integrated seamlessly into FME to build workflows that automate very computational intensive tasks and to tackle a couple of problems in the real estate world that there was no transformers natively that was able to kind of analyze this. The final thing we want to show you is for many of the retailers that we work with or restaurants, either they build an internal sales forecasting model, which is often regression based, or they go to outside firms to help them build a sales forecasting model. Sales forecasting models will help answer the question, if you're looking at a new prospective site and you were to open up a new store, how many dollars in sales would you get? And it takes into account not just incremental new sales, but also cannibalization and sales transference to sister stores and competitors. Well, we've taken a market and we've broken it into a 1 by 1 mile grid, essentially sampling the entire market with very small location options. And this grid was built for all of North America, and it was built in FME using a grid transformer that we created. The next step after having the grid is to imagine that the centroid of each 1 by 1 mile grid represents a potential location for my business. Well, we are able to combine the sales forecasting model inside of FME with the grid analysis and run a forecast for every single grid, assigning a color to the value generated. And in this case, green equals very high sales potential. Store is going to make lots of money. And red and gray represent caution or extreme caution, i.e. you don't want to open up there. So you can see the blue dots on the screen representing my existing store locations in the market, and the green areas identifying the trade areas of very high sales forecast potential. Before this company would move into that market and just blindly sort of or reactively look for real estate, now they've got a target to aim at. They can see the hot spots in those green areas, which are the high sales potential areas, which are going to minimize cannibalization. And so in this way, we can screen the entire North American market to build a market strategy plan for a retailer or a restaurant or anyone else who is real estate related, like healthcare companies, and be able to be proactive in identifying the highest potential sites and minimizing their risk. So I believe this is our final slide. I'm not sure how we're doing for time, Kat, but my goal was hopefully to give you a flavor of how we've combined and built some custom transformers into FME that solve business problems specific to the real estate sector. Okay, Kat, thank you. Back to you. How are we doing for time?
You were doing excellent for time, Michael. Lots of time still left.
Okay.
While I have you, we had some interesting chatting for the various industries. We had some health and humanitarian organizations. We had some market analysis, a lot of analysis type organizations. Finding homes with nice neighbors, my personal favorite. One that popped up was mining. Not putting you on the spot, but kind of putting you on the spot. Is there a real estate location scenario for mining organizations that you can think of?
For mining organizations, in terms of finding
good location.
Well, yeah, I would think in that context it would be around what kind of population you're going to impact from a new development or a mine development, I would think.
Well, I mean, absolutely, certainly. Our site-wise area searcher is one of the transformers we built that basically enables you to define a catchment area. In retail, we call it a tray area, but in mining, we could call it something else, an impact area or a catchment area. So you can either define a drive time around a mine, you could draw a ring radius, 10, 20, 30, 40 kilometers or miles, or you could do a custom drawn polygon. Aaron, maybe this is an opportunity to kind of go back to FME Live and pull up that transformer. But by defining your polygon, you can then search that polygon to pull up the demographics within it. So you will be able to tell the number of people that you might impact. You can tell anything about the demographic or household characteristics about the population in that area. And maybe while we move on to the next question, Aaron can bring up Sitewise Area Searcher and you can just pop it open and everyone will get a sense of how wired into that. There's about 2,000 demographic variables that can be assessed.
Okay. We do have a good question. I think, Mark, are you answering that one right now live, or do you want to ask it?
Somebody was asking what street network for the drive time calculations you use.
Yeah, that's a good question. We chose to use the Navtech or HERE. Navtech rebranded their company as HERE, H-E-R-E, and we're using the HERE street geometries to run our drive time engine.
And this is just a question from me, but you also supplied the demographic data with your transformation tools. Is that correct, or that can be supplied?
Yes. It's essential. It's like you have to have that data to be able to fuel the transformers, and our company has been partnered with the various demographic data suppliers, and the data has been put into a specific format that you would need to get it from us. So the demographic data sets that we use are Pitney Bowes, Environics, Nielsen, sometimes known as Claritas, AGS, and STI PopStats. So we're neutral when it comes to data. We're completely agnostic. Generally, when someone is trying to solve a problem, we're going to look at what data is going to be the best fit for them, and then from there we would license the data with the transformers.
And then there's another question here, Michael, about the previous slide of the forecasting. They were asking, rather than seeing that in a visual context, is that grid actually stored in a database somewhere that you can do other kind of analytics on, I guess?
Yes, it is. This was just the visual. The idea of the grid is that a vice president of real estate or a chief development officer for one of the companies we work with, like a Chipotle, an Arby's, a Costco, they'd be able to travel the markets with an iPad and be able to visually see this. But underlying the grid belies the sophistication of the analysis and the numbers that are stored in the database below. There are a lot of values stored below the grid. There are specific key model factors, competition, demographics, site attribute data, and all of that is being remembered as well, so that if someone wants to go back into the system and interactively assess a site, it'll pull up all of their inputs and give them abilities to change the scenarios and rerun the sales forecast. So yes, there are a lot of numbers behind the grid. We're just showing a very high-level picture of hotspots.
Yeah, great. Have you ever worked with overseas data? I know you don't. I don't think you supply overseas data. But there's no reason you couldn't integrate it into the workflow if a customer had that. Is that right?
No, none at all. We are starting now to work with overseas data. It really sort of depends what country we're working on. We are working with some global retailers right now who have interest in the UK, China, and Denmark. So we started to play with that data. But what's available and what level of resolution and what quality varies wildly depending on the country that you're working in.
Yeah, okay. And then somebody was asking, well, how do we get our hands on some of your transformation tools?
That's a good question. Well, I think the best way would just for us to to have them contact us, and we would be able to have a conversation about the requirements to see how we could help out. And to everyone listening, Safe Software and Tetrad, we work side by side in terms of supporting these tools and really sort of thinking through your problems and being able to help advise on how to, you know, on the Tetrad side, how to optimize and build these workflows. But we always start at the end first. We always start at what's the business problem you're trying to solve, and then we work backwards to figure out what are the tools that we need to provide to you to configure them to solve that problem. So it's very modular.
Yeah, and Michael, thanks for bringing that up. I want to emphasize that we have worked closely together. We had one of the Tetrad developers, actually, they've been in our office quite frequently during the development of these transformers that they've added to the FME family of transformers. So yeah, we have a very close relationship with this team. So no need to worry about that if that's something.
Awesome. Well, I think, is there any other questions that are interesting, Mark, that have come up?
No, I think
we've got
that's
them all.
Probably good.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Michael and Aaron, for joining us. I'm just going to make me.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. I guess the key point is that you need to use your location data and demographic data to make better informed decisions. That data is available and out there. So, you know, find out where your customers and clients are, and those customers and clients aren't necessarily the, you know, spend money and buy a bag of chips customers. They could very well be, you know, looking for a healthcare provider or a doctor or any number of other kind of location-based business where you have customers. Find out what your market share is, and then find out where you should go from there. You know, are there other locations that need your services that you could be using? So thank you guys so much for joining us. I think we've already done the Q&A, so we can skip that slide. We really appreciate it, and I think that's it. Shall we say goodbye?
Yes, it's goodbye from me,
Yeah.
Goodbye from Kathleen, I guess.
Yeah.
Goodbye from Michael.
Goodbye from Michael and Aaron. Bye.
Thank you very much for hosting us.